Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the latest episode of the Digital Adoption Show, where we host top L&D, HR, and tech luminaries to discuss what's next in the future of work and technology. I'm your host, Apurva, team lead of sales development at Whatfix. And today's discussion will focus on how we can improve process efficiency in the healthcare sector. To discuss the same with us, we have a very special guest today, Julie Savage-Fournier, the founder of Kaizen Radical, a consulting firm that's been revolutionizing healthcare processes for over 5 years. With more than 20 years of experience in the healthcare sector, Julie brings an incredible blend of executive coaching, lean expertise, and engineering skills to help healthcare organizations unlock their full potential. She's a lean master black belt, a kata coach, and a fun trainer known for simplifying work while multiplying the results. Julie's mission here is to overcome the systemic roadblocks that prevents healthcare professionals from fully contributing to the society. Her work focuses on process design and improvement, helping teams identify inefficiencies that are often hidden in people-driven processes. Julie, we're thrilled to have you with us today and can't wait to dive into your journey and the incredible work that you're doing.
Thank you very much, Apurva.
Great. So to start things off, we have a little segment that we called as the Digital Pulse. This is where we explore the more personal side of our guests. So Julie, is there any particular passion or activity outside of work that is particularly close to your heart?
I really love to make things with my hands. I love to work on something and see the results I get. So I do a lot of crafts like knitting, crochet, sewing, drawing, painting, even baking. I'm making the most wonderful cupcakes.
What are your favorite kinds of cupcakes? What's the best thing that you bake?
It's a chocolate cupcake with an espresso buttercream.
That sounds heavenly. And I think of late, there's a lot of interest in crochet as well. Whenever I go online, I do see a lot of people out there trying to crochet different things. So those are like amazing skills to have. So like, how do you spend your time with all of this? Is there a particular time of the day you limit for these activities, or how does it go about?
Well, sometimes when I take a little break, because it's very good for our brain, especially when we work with our brain to take some micro breaks during the day. So sometimes it's just, okay, between two meetings, I'm doing one row of my knitting project. Or when I have 2 or 3 minutes, I will just color a part of a drawing, because it changes the context we're working with. And it's also satisfying for our brains to see the results of what we do. And when we work in technology, it's really difficult to actually see and understand the results of what we do. So having those little motivation breaks during the day, it keeps our energy high as well.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting thing. So yeah, I completely understand where you're coming from. Most of us, we are always on the screen for long periods of time. So having those little small breaks to kind of stimulate our brain with these activities, that sounds very interesting. So thank you so much for sharing that with us, Julie. So moving on, we have something called as the quick rapid fire round, where we have 3 quirky questions, which we proudly call as the triple strike. So are you ready to be triple striked, Julie?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so question 1, if you had to switch careers completely and money was not an object, what wild job would you go for?
Well, I thought about 2 things, because when I'm thinking about money is no object, I think about volunteering in the community.
Right.
And because I'm dyslexic, I think I would volunteer with people who have learning disabilities to encourage them, help them overcome their disability. And also to show them that even though you have a learning disability, you can do great things. I'm dyslexic and I have a master's in engineering. So like it's not that, well, it's an obstacle. It's making things more difficult, but
Mhm.
it doesn't mean you can't. And also I would write mystery novels
Oh,
because
wow.
I love reading. I love reading mystery novels. And I think if I could just be free and money was no object, I would write novels as well.
Okay, that's so great to know. And Julie, it's also very inspiring to see that you overcame that disability, and not only did you overcome that, you are also willing to kind of help out others who are facing these challenges. And that's a really, really noble cause and a really noble answer that I think you gave. The second one, of course, I think we've all had a point in our life where we want to kind of be mystery novelists. So, any particular books that you're fond of, or any particular books that you read quite often in the mystery genre?
Well, when I was a teen, I read everything from Agatha Christie.
Right.
And then I read everything from Stephen King. So those are classics. Right now, the ones I enjoy very much, she's a local writer. She's writing her novels in English. She's called Louise Penny.
Okay.
And her novels are really great, and we get into the situation, but also she writes about places that I knew in my childhood. So the
Ah.
mysteries are actually in little villages that I know.
Oh,
So
that's great.
it makes it even more close to my heart.
Oh, that's great. I think I'm gonna definitely post this call. I'm gonna look this up because Agatha Christie novels is something that I grew up with as well in my teenage years. And whenever it's made into a movie, I just ensure I see it so that I can compare and contrast it with the books.
Yeah.
That's great. Okay, so moving on to the next question. This is a fun one. If you could be any animal for a day, what would you pick? And what kind of animal mischief would you be getting up to?
Yeah, well, I had to think a lot about this one because there are so many fun animals.
Right?
And I chose that I would be a beaver
Oh.
because there's something fun about knocking trees down and then building a dam with
Right.
I they look so cool when they're like swimming with a big tree so much bigger than they are just to place
Right.
it on their dam. So they actually sleep all day and they're building during the night.
Uh,
So
is that
they're
something that you
sleeping.
resonate with?
Yeah.
Good, good. I think beaver is a very fun answer. I think, if I'm not wrong, I read somewhere that beavers are known as the nature's engineers because
Yeah.
they're the ones, breaking the wood down and actually creating those dams when they. So, yeah, fun answer, Julie. And okay, so getting to the third question,
Yeah.
you get a superpower. Okay, so you have to choose between the ability to fly or to breathe underwater. Which one would you be picking and how would you be utilizing it?
That one was very easy because I'm afraid of heights. So
Ah.
I will pick breathing underwater. And also, again, as a teen and young adult, I was doing scuba diving.
Oh, wow.
And I really love the atmosphere of scuba diving because it's so quiet when you're
Mhm.
underwater, but
Mhm.
also you see things that you don't see on the surface. You see all those animals that are very different than animals that actually walk on the surface. And you see those kind of plants that are totally different than the plants that we see on the surface as well. So I would really just explore. And
Mhm.
also, well, most of the parts of our planet that haven't been explored yet are underwater.
Exactly.
So I would just go to places where nobody have been.
Yes, that's also a really nice answer. So recently, actually, Julie, I had been to Vietnam, and I did get to do some snorkeling over there. So I haven't done scuba diving yet, but that's definitely on my list. But I completely understand where you come from. I think it's so peaceful out there in terms of just being present where you are. You're not thinking about everything else. It's just you and those fishes and the corals and the sea animals. So yeah, I think that's a very calming experience, which I'm sure, I think if I also had the same question, I would be answering the same way because I would love to explore, the water. I think there's so much out there to explore. So yeah, really great answer there as well. So now moving on, let's move to the more real bit of the podcast, the serious bit, if I may say so. So, Julie, before we dive into the article, could you take me through your career journey? What motivated you to start Kaizen Radical? And what was the big idea or some kind of inspiration that you had that led you to launch your own company?
Good. So I started as a manufacturing engineer.
Mhm.
So I was working in electronics manufacturing.
Okay.
And after about 2 years, I switched positions and I was hired by ambulance services
Okay.
for process improvement in ambulance services.
Okay.
Um, and then I grew into that role where I was in charge of the trauma care, public safety, and ambulance services for a regional health network.
Okay.
So, and there's a lot of optimization to be done there because in trauma care and in ambulance services, time is really of the essence. You cannot waste a minute because every minute that we spend or that we waste, there are more chances that someone will die.
Right.
So it becomes very important to be as efficient as possible. And the stakes are very high as well.
Right.
And after about 15 years in that domain, I became a logistics manager in a hospital.
Okay.
And my team was responsible for the material management of the surgical suites. I actually had to build a department because it was a new department. Material before was handled by nurses, and we were totally changing the way they work, and we will talk about it a bit later.
Sure.
I launched Kaizen Radical 5 years ago. It was after the death of my mother because she had cancer, and in the last months of her life, I spent a lot of time with her in the hospital. And we had many discussions about her career. She was an engineer as well. So we're engineers from mother to daughter in our family. And she was telling me about some of her regrets. And that was she had a very nice career. She was a manager in an electrics facility, but she was regretting many of the things she couldn't do. And we had a discussion about what I would do if I was not afraid of anything. And what I would do was to start my business if I was not afraid. And it really made me think. So it took another 2 years of thinking before I actually launched my business. But I did, and I'm very proud of it. And I'm sure wherever she is, she's proud of me as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think, Julie, this was so heartwarming to hear. I think, thank you so much for sharing this with us. I think it's inspiring, it's heartwarming. It's really nice to see, sometimes, yeah, I think more than things we do, it's the things we don't do that we regret. So first thing is to think about it, in your early stages, think about, okay, what would I do if I don't have any regrets? And the second is to have the ability and the strength to actually take that plunge. So kudos to you, and thank you so much for sharing this. This was a really heartwarming story, and like thank you so much for that, Julie. I think very, very inspiring, and it really, I think it just the story was so wholesome. I absolutely loved it. Thank you so much. So Moving on to the next question here. In your recent article, you discuss the improvement of healthcare technology and healthcare efficiency through lean practices. Could you walk us through the challenges that the healthcare teams were facing at that time, and the key goals that they had, which they aim to achieve with the process improvements?
Yeah. So the biggest change was really about moving from a 20th century healthcare setting to a 21st century healthcare setting.
Right.
So there was a new facility that was built.
Okay.
So the surgical suites moved into the new facility. And while they move, we also added many systems to their workflow to have a better understanding of what they were doing and a better control over the material as well. All the goal of that was to free up the nurses so they could really focus on the patient, to delegate all the material handling to my team. So we had 3 phases in that project. The first one was the move and starting to work with the new IT systems. And we had to stabilize the situation because, as everyone in technology knows, we do test before implementation, but we can never test absolutely everything.
Right.
And some things that really difficult to test is the actual real volume of transaction that there will be into the systems. So we had 3 new systems that were all connected to each other. Every single connection was working, but when we put everything together, then we discovered things like server capacity or all those fun things that we have to deal with in tech. So that stabilization phase lasted about 4 months because people were not familiar with the IT system, so they were making requests out of the IT system, or they were not making it the right way. They were not entering the right information. So that was a big adjustment. And then we had an improvement phase where we actually did a Kaizen event with the logistics teams, the sterilization team, the nurses, and the surgeons. And we redesigned the process according to the new systems that were in place, because the processes have been developed before designing the solution, but we had to adjust many things. So we had to redesign the processes, and we had about 1.5 years that was the actual implementation of all the solutions that we found during this event. So yeah, that was quite a challenge. And also the hospital had decided that in 4 months, we had to be back to full capacity for surgeries, which was very ambitious because other hospitals had done it in 2 years. And our challenge was 4 months. And we actually achieved that challenge. So it was incredible to work with all these people from totally different background that didn't speak the same language. So that was a huge project. That's why I wrote an article about it, because I think it's worth sharing when we do something like that, because other people can actually learn from that experience.
Yes, definitely. I think being able to do something in 4 months, which usually takes 2 years, there will be a lot of learning from it. I think sometimes, when I do talk to leaders like you, the problem is usually during the execution phase. The planning is there, you have everything in place, but when you get into the actual execution of that particular project is when you face the smaller things that you don't think of. So when bigger organizations and there are implementations where they have had success, it's great for us to be able to refer those successes and understand what process they followed so that we can emulate it to make our process easier. So first of all, kudos to you and your team to get this done. I think when you would have started, it might have seemed like an impossible task. Now I'm thinking about it, I still think it might have been impossible, but to be able to do that is definitely one thing. But again, Julie, what's inspiring about you is that after doing it, you ensure that you can do everything to ensure somebody else is able to learn from it and the society is able to gain from it. I think healthcare sector is one sector which is always, in the need of improvement, because there are new diseases coming every day. There are new, technologies coming every day to ensure that the best healthcare is provided to everybody. It's accessible, it's available, it's affordable. It's an industry which is always going to stay. So always
Mhm.
ready to improve, always ready to kind of learn how we can do things better. And it's really great. And I'm so glad you wrote that article, and I'm happy that we got a chance to go through that as well. So thank you so much for sharing this. Uh,
Sure.
Now, coming back to your profile, you mentioned that adapting lean principles like kata and kaizen in critical care settings, especially during a major organizational transition. So how do you apply these particular principles in high stakes environments, and what mindset shifts were necessary to ensure the success in the real world scenarios?
It's more of an adjustment than a shift for the mindset, because the most important thing is to focus on the purpose and not on the tools.
Hmm.
The purpose of lean is much more than the actual tools that we know. And to make sure that everyone agrees on the same goal is the most important thing, because you cannot improve without a goal. When you don't have a goal, you don't know which way to go to improve, and you don't
Exactly.
know what you're trying to achieve. So to be very clear on what we're trying to achieve, why it's important to achieve it,
Yep.
is another big factor as well. There are so many changes that are done for the sake of changing, or because there is a new trend. And those changes, they don't last. Most of the time, they don't even work. So when we're doing such a big change, it takes a lot of effort. So we need to keep the motivation of everyone to achieve what we wanted to achieve. So we need a very strong purpose, a very strong reason that we need to change. And also, I was focusing on improving the value stream. For healthcare, the value stream was patient care.
Right.
Logistics was not the value stream. I was not improving the process of my department. I was trying to improve the nurses' process and the surgeon's process with the help of my department. So if I had to increase costs in my department so that I made their life better, then I would do it. So
Mhm.
I was not trying to optimize the work of my employees. Sometimes I was giving them extra work so we can offload nurses from their work. And in the end, the whole organization was winning, because, well, first of all, sometimes I could reduce 8 hours of nursing times with 2 hours of logistics time. So we're still like, we gained 6 hours.
Right.
And also, a logistics attendant is paid less than a nurse because they don't have the same expertise. And in the end, it was always about systems thinking and thinking of the patient, what's best for the patient. And for us, it was, well, what's best for the nurse is best for the patient. So if we can provide her with all the material that she needs, then she can take optimal care of the patient.
Yeah.
So that's how we did it. And we used many lean tools like 5S and Kanban and all of these tools. And we had barcodes and scanners and a lot of technology, but it was always because we wanted the nurses to be able to focus on their patient. So if it didn't help a nurse to focus on her patient, we were not doing it.
Got it. Got it. I think what I definitely understood and learned from this is about the importance of setting the right goal and the right objective, and ensuring that the rest of the process that you follow is ensuring that that particular goal is met. And the focus on the nurses, as I think, is very important because they are the ones who are the first responders who are directly engaging with the patients. So you keep the nurses happy, you're keeping the patients happy. So yeah,
Exactly.
I think that was a great goal and vision to start with, and the execution, I'm sure you'd have done a great job. So in terms of process improvement in healthcare, it usually goes hand in hand with change management. So, in your experience, what strategies have you found to be most effective in managing any organizational change within the healthcare sector? And what key elements make these particular strategies work for you?
The first thing in change management is to listen and observe how people work to actually understand their work. And I will give you an example. In the logistics ERP system, we were interacting with medical supplies by part number or by supplier's description of the supplies. But the nurses, they didn't know any part number and they didn't know the supplier's description. So they were asking for the blue clip. And when we go into the ERP system, well, we cannot type blue clip and actually find anything because it was called something totally different. And in the beginning, there was a conflict because the nurse was asking the blue clip. We couldn't find the blue clip because there was no blue clip in the system. And by trying to understand their needs, it was not reasonable for us to ask nurses to learn a new way to name things or to learn all those part codes that they really don't care about.
Right.
So what we started to do, we figured that the nurses, when they were in the supply room, they were looking at things and they were very efficient at picking whatever they needed.
Mm-hmm.
And what we told them was, take this bin, put in everything that you need for that type of surgery. And then we would take the bin with all the supplies, and someone from logistics was entering the bill of material in the system.
Okay.
So that way we took the strengths of everyone, because logistics people were good at identifying material and finding their correspondence in the system. Nurses, they were good at just looking at the supplies and taking what they needed. And we started to work as a team that way. So instead of being in the conflict of, you're asking for a blue clip, it doesn't exist in the system, blah, 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 that was going back and forth and helping nobody.
Right.
we found ways to make it so everyone could focus on their strengths and to make everything work out.
That's good. So I think that sometimes happens when you deal with bigger organization and bigger clients. There is sometimes a disconnect between different teams because they're all used to working in silos. So I think the organization flourishes when you're able to kind of bring all of them together and, as you said, ensure that the best skill that each of them has is utilized to the best advantage rather than trying to force skills, cross skills on them where, everybody's going to end up frustrated, to be very honest. So I think that's a great strategy to ensure, one, you're ensuring that the skills of the users are being utilized very well. And two, you're also trying to bring that whole community aspect where we're out there to help each other out rather than just focusing on, okay, task one done, task two done, and like, moving on with the day. So yeah, very interesting take on how you're able to do it. I think when you mention those things, I think I could resonate sometimes, because I think the jargons used in medicine is very different from person to person. So to
Mhm.
be able to put the same jargon across the organization would be a pretty time-consuming task, if I may say so.
And I think also with a technology project to actually watch and be interested on how people were working before the technology,
Mm-hmm.
it helps you see how you can actually help them with
Right.
the technology, because there's a way people decided to work that way. And when you understand why they're doing it this way, then you can build the technology system to support the way they're working, instead of trying to impose a technology onto someone that usually they think that it was working great when they were doing it without the technology. So you actually have to show them that they will win something and that it will make their lives better.
Right, definitely, definitely. I think with change, the first reaction is always no. Why do we have to change? We're good the way we do it. But like you said, showing them the right way to show them what could be better and giving them the right motivation towards why we are doing this change, I think that makes it easier for them also to understand why this process is happening rather than just imposing it, as you said, on them without them actually realizing what benefits them and the organization could gain from that particular change or the tool.
Mhm.
Yeah, perfect. So, I'm sure you've had multiple projects, but once the project like this is usually completed, the focus usually shifts from maintaining and building upon these improvements. So, what steps do you or your organization take to ensure the lean culture you've established continues to strive in your clients' organizations? And what advice would you give to these other healthcare organizations who are looking to implement lean principles? I know it's a long question, but you can definitely break this answer up.
Yeah, well, the essence of lean and the essence of continuous improvement is that it's the job of everyone every day.
Mm-hmm.
So for that, there are two key elements, is that each manager can become a coach of their employees.
Right.
So each manager can actually make sure to develop their people. And the second point is to teach people how to solve problems, because improvement is problem solving and there's no small problem.
Right.
So if you can teach people to problem solve in a common way, a way that everyone understands, then you will fix the little everyday frictions that make work not really satisfying. Like, I don't know, sometimes you have the printer, but the stapler is in the other room. You don't you can teach your employees that they don't need your permission to just take the stapler and place it near the printer,
Right.
and then make sure that everyone's okay with that, because if we need a stapler in the other room, well, we can buy another.
Right. Right.
But sometimes people just get stuck in the way they're working because they don't feel they have the permission to solve a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And what's very important to teach them is that first they have the permission to solve a problem, and that there's a way, there's a process in solving a problem that they can learn. And
Mm-hmm.
then their manager can be a coach for their problem solving thinking, and can actually support their problem solving initiatives. And that's how you improve every day. And when you're a manager and you don't trust your employees to problem solve, it means that there's only one brain solving problems.
Right.
I had 30 people on my team. By teaching them how to solve their own problems, there were 31 brains solving problems. It's way faster that way.
Definitely, definitely. I think again, great answer. So is there, I know, I just wanted to check, is there any mantra or anything that you follow in life which you know, bring into your, bring into like your work as well?
Uh, I have a few ones. I have one that is remember the person you want to be,
Right.
because sometimes we don't act like the person we want to be. But
Yes.
we need to remember that person that we want to be, to catch ourselves
Right.
and to try to modify our behavior. And the other one is to focus on what's important, to not get lost into the details or to not get distracted by something else, to always focus on what's important.
Got it. Got it. So I think the first thing you mentioned, remember what you want to be, I think, again, a very good mantra to live by, because I think sometimes with a lot of different things coming up, we do tend to forget the basic idea of what we want to do, and you know, the situations just take control. But I think that's really great advice for everyone who's listening, to kind of remember that base feeling of why you do what you want to do and what you want to be, and keeping that as the kind of baseline to move forward. So yeah, it's a great answer, Julia. So now coming to our final question. When you drive successful process improvements, it's very important to track the outcomes of that particular improvement. What metrics do you typically target to measure the success of these improvements? And is there any way you calculate the return of investment in a healthcare setting? Because that'll be different from maybe a normal, you know, other industries or organizations.
Well, for a company that is for profit, usually the success or the performance is measured with financial metrics. But in Quebec, healthcare is not for profit and it's government run. So there's no notion of revenue, or there's no notion of profit. So what we were looking for, it's a ratio, the quantity and the quality of care over the expenses. So if we can improve the quantity of patients that we care for, and if we can improve the quality for the same expenses, we're winning. Because usually it's a fixed yearly budget. So if we can do more with that budget, it means that we've improved something.
Right. Got
And
it.
a for-profit organization, of course, we would like to either increase the revenue or reduce expenses. Sometimes we can even do both. But all the other metrics are linked to that after all, because for healthcare, if I want to increase the quality of service, then I can define, well, to increase the quality of service, I need to provide the right material. So what's the percentage of the material that I've provided to the nurse that is right? I need to provide it on time. So then I can measure, was it late? Was it on time? And when nurses needed extra material, we were calculating the time that it took us to provide the extra material. We went down to 3 minutes. So we actually managed to reduce the quantity of material that they needed for surgery, because they were putting a lot of material that was not always used. But then we were wasting the material because sometimes it got contaminated. We could not return them in sterile stock. So by being more efficient in providing the extra material really fast, we could reduce the material waste, because they would only order for the beginning of the surgery what they were sure that they would need, and they would call us and get the extra material in a few minutes. So those are ways that we can track the progress, but I like to always link all of those metrics to a very high level metric that is a system metric. So it would be profit for a private company, and it's the quality of care, the quantity of care for a hospital.
Great. I think, I'm glad you talked about, because when you first said quality and quantity, I was like, quality is a very difficult metric to actually measure. But then thank you for defining what exactly you consider under the term quality. And I think efficiency is another very important metric to keep in mind when you talk about the quality. And again, with healthcare, the hygiene, the accessibility, and the sterility of equipments, again, come into a huge play when it comes to the quality. So I think a very interesting take on how metrics can be gauged for the healthcare sector versus, a profit-making company. So yeah, glad you shared that. So now we're kind of at the end of the conversation. I don't feel like leaving you, Julie, because I think I've had a wonderful conversation with you today. The discussion has truly been enriching. I think from the first answer we got from you towards, the last answer we got from you, your journey has been so inspirational and unique. And I'm glad I got to explore this complicated yet important sector like healthcare and process improvement with you. Any last thoughts, Julie?
Well, I'm very glad you invited me, and I hope it will inspire a lot of people to consider non-traditional path, because I trained as a manufacturing engineer. I was supposed to work in manufacturing, and I went into a completely different sector because those engineering skills, they're needed more and more everywhere. And also to always align your career to your heart and to who you are. Like don't settle for a job that is just to like feed you and pay for your house. Try to pursue a job that you're passionate about and that you feel you're really making a difference in the life of other people, because that's the best reward for us humans. We're designed to connect with other people and try to make sure that you have that meaning somewhere in the way you work.
Definitely, Julie. I think you really struck a chord with me, and I'm sure you'll be, striking a chord with a lot of people in the audience who'll be listening to this podcast. So, first of all, thank you so much for accepting our invite to join us on our show, and secondly, for being like so inspiring and so sweet throughout this conversation. Honestly, I don't know how the time passed. I think it was a great conversation, and yeah, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. I think maybe it's time for us to sign off. To our listeners, stay tuned for more such content like this featuring incredible thought leaders like Julie. We are available on all major podcast platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Whether you're at home or on the go, our podcast is your gateway to learning about the latest trend in L&D, HR, and technology. I'm your host for today, Apurva, signing off. Have a great day.